Hi and welcome to this latest 10x leadership video. A couple of weeks ago we were talking about making decisions and the one and two way door. If you've not seen that, it's worth going and having a look. This week we're going to be talking about decision making again, but how to get clarity and make sure that you really understand what you're talking about. And there's a killer question that will help with that. So I'll see you after the break. So let's imagine a situation then. So we've got John here, and John works in Brian's team, Brian works for you, and he's the project manager for the new skills assessment tool that's been developed by your team. And what we're going to do is listen in, I might even do the voices, to the conversation between him and Brian about how the project's going. So John is saying, as you can see on the screen there, hi Brian, I'm glad I've caught up with you. I've had a problem with the skills assessment tool. The software we're using can't do what you want it to do. Brian says, hi John, that's not good news. I presume this means we aren't going to meet our schedule. It's worse than that, says John. As the software doesn't do what we need, we'll have to scrap the work we've done so far and buy a different tool. And Brian's reaction is, oh no, I better go and tell the boss. The sooner they know the bad news, the quicker we can free up some money to fix the problem. And as you can see, Brian is then thinking, well, I don't really want to have to tell the boss. This isn't, that isn't going to work, and we're going to miss the deadline. And he doesn't know how they managed to get into that situation, how they made such a mistake. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's all well and good. What's the killer question? Let's get into that. So for me, the killer question is this, or something like this. Can I just check what you've just told me? Is that, as you can see there at the top, is it a fact? So is it something that you've checked? Is it something that is known to be true? Or is it an assumption that we're making? Have we not checked the facts? Do we think that it's going to happen, but we haven't checked any of the details? Or is it a myth? And I've seen a lot of myths, usually around change projects, where we're moving from one way of working to another way of working. And what I've seen is that quite often people make up a scenario. So either they make it up in order to discredit the new way of working, or they believe it's true, but usually what happens is it's so far-fetched. It might happen once in 50 years, but they're saying, well, how about this scenario? Well, the trouble is, if you go with those things and you just treat them as if they're true, before you know it, you've gone down a rabbit hole, you've wasted loads of time and effort, and it was never true in the first place. Never a fact. It wasn't even an assumption, it was a myth. It was something that somebody's created. So if we go back to the scenario, bear with me a second. So if we go back to the scenario, and when John said, gave Brian the bad news about the software not doing what he needed it to do, had Brian stopped for a second and asked the killer question, so something like, can I just check what you've just told me? Is that a fact, assumption, or a myth? if he'd asked that question, then what would have happened is that would have realised, they both would have realised that actually what John was describing was actually an assumption. Him and his team believed that it couldn't do it, that the software wasn't going to work and work in the way that Brian and the organisation wanted it to work. However, we know it was an assumption because when Andy, one of the most experienced developers, had a look at the problem, he showed John and the team how to solve it. And what transpired was it was a lack of experience in John's team that made them think that it couldn't be done. And quite often you see that where people, I suppose if they talk confidently enough, and if they are the experts in their area, in their field, and they've been asked a direct question, and they're saying something isn't going to work, like this in this case, then you do think, well, they must know what they're talking about. But in my experience, and having used this for a long time, quite often what people are doing is they're making an assumption that they believe what they're saying is true, but it's not until you challenge them, in a positive way, but it's not until you challenge them that they think, well, wait a minute, have we just made an assumption, or is it a fact, or have we just created something because we didn't want to go down the route that a company or organisation want us to go down anyway. So my recommendation to you, if you want to be a great leader, is to have this I suppose mental model or approach, and use it frequently. And whenever, it's not even, you don't even have to wait until something smells a bit fishy and you think, well, this doesn't sound quite right. But when people are talking to you confidently, just ask the question. And actually, one of the best ways I've found to do it is to turn it into a game, or it's not a very fun game, but it's more of it takes the edge off it. So the way that I've used it over the years is I say, can we just play the fact, assumption or myth game? And once your team are used to doing that, what you'll find is they'll do it to themselves without you even having to prompt them. And they will do it, not only to themselves when you're there, but to themselves and their teams, to check and ensure that they've got the clarity themselves about what they're talking about. And I had an instance recently where I was talking to my team about something, and they said, look, before you even say, let's play the factor assumption game, I'm just telling you now, I've realised what I've just told you is an assumption. So I'm just going to go off and check. Now, the real benefit of that is that you do get clarity about what the problem is. And if you understand what the problem is, you've got a chance of fixing it. If you think that there, is a problem and it doesn't exist, you've wasted a load of time. But it also works the other way around. So quite often you will get people telling you that things are going well, projects are going well, activities are going well, that Lisa is going to be dealing with that particular action. And then you say, well, is that a fact? Do they know that they've got that action? Do we know that they're working on it? Have they agreed to clear it by the date that we've agreed to action it? And usually what you find again is that people have made an assumption that those things are true. So really good, really simple, really useful technique, and I'd recommend it to you. As ever, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. I'm really interested again in understanding whether this works for you. I've used it for years. It works really, really well. I'm just interested in your views and perhaps your improvements on this. If you want to help your team understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, share the video. Give them a link. that's it for this week. So I hope you found it useful, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.